Hi, everyone. I'm Mad Hildebrandt, and this is the Get Mad Show. Today, our guest is Joseph Sanchez, a candidate for the 3rd Congressional District here in New Mexico. He is also a sitting representative in the New Mexico State House. Let's go. So welcome to the show, Joseph. We're really glad to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me an opportunity to speak with you and your viewers. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate that you're taking a little time out of your campaigning, and I know you've got multiple interviews today. So I would like to take first a minute and just give you that minute to make yourself human to our viewers, to just, who is it, what is it about you that makes you you?
Okay. So a little bit about myself. I'm Joseph Sanchez. I was born and raised in the Espanola Valley in northern New Mexico, right smack in the middle of the district. The Espanola Valley. I graduated from the Espanola Valley Public Schools. I went on to get my bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering from the University of New Mexico. I also obtained my master's in business administration from New Mexico State, so I have 2 master's degrees. Part of my work experience is I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory for about 20 years, 8 years where as an engineering manager. And basically the scope of my work was to review construction projects, infrastructure projects. That's my background there. I was also general manager of Jemez Mountains Electric, the largest electric co-op in the state. We served 5 counties in northern New Mexico, over 30,000 customers. Growing up in Alcalde, it's a ranching community just north of Espanola. We grew apples. We still grow hay. We have cattle, horses. So that's been a huge part of my life. My father was a construction worker and raised 8 of us. So I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. My mom obviously had to stay home to take care of us. So he did construction, and he kind of supplemented our income by selling apples and stuff. So selling cattle, big family. So strong hard work ethic installed since we were kids. Same with all my brothers. But I know my parents really pushed me to obtain an education, which is why I got 2 master's degrees. They really emphasized they didn't want me to work as hard physically as they had to when we were kids. I know my dad worked very hard. He actually owned a small business. It was a small bar. So he'd work construction all day. Then he would bartend at night. Then on weekends, he'd be picking apples or have us helping pick apples, and we'd be selling them. We'd even go to Colorado to sell apples or trade them for potatoes. So kind of that's how I grew up. I perform in a band called the Blue Ventures, which performs Spanish music. We're real popular in northern New Mexico. Music's a big part of my life. Just culturally, that's a huge part of northern New Mexico. Just love music. That's a little bit about myself. I'm running for this office. I'll talk about that more, I'm sure, when you ask questions. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's, a real salt of the earth story, somebody that, has their hands in the ground, with apples and the livestock and then just, and then right down to the music. And our state is so, it's such a beautiful state, and it's so full of this life, and music is a big part of that. And I think that's, that you've been a big, right into that, and that's pretty awesome. One of the things that people are thinking about right now, and it's what's keeping so many people at home, and they're worried about their jobs, and they're worried about their, not just their livelihoods, but their health and their families. And that's what's going on right now with this pandemic and COVID-19. So could you spend a minute and just talk about what's happening with COVID-19 in the CD3 up there?
So I have a lot of friends and family that own small businesses, and unfortunately they've had to lay off people. I think we need to do a lot more to support these small businesses and people themselves. I don't think we've scratched the surface on what the federal government could be doing. I think they need to focus more on those people. I didn't mention earlier, but I am a state representative. I'm actually the chair of the House Appropriations and Finance Committee, the vice chair. We're going to be having a special session now in June, and we'll see what we have to do. I know we're waiting on the federal government to see what they're going to allow us to do and what money we're actually going to get. So we can actually figure out what we're going to do with the state's budget. I'm hoping that they give us sufficient aid where we're able to keep a lot of the programs we put in place. Because I know, like our great governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, we created the early childhood department. That's an example of programs that I'm hoping that we're able to keep, because that's very important to our state. That's just an example. Our first responders, I think we should have been better prepared with the PPE. That's an example. Our firefighters, I got endorsed by the International Association of Firefighters, which is nationwide. As a state rep, I fully supported them, and law enforcement and nurses and all other first responders. So to me, they're critically important. They're at the front lines. Like I said, small businesses, we got to help them get through this wave so they don't shut their doors forever, because they employ a lot of the people that are going on unemployment. That's just an example, and we could be doing a lot more medically. I know I live in a rural area, but fortunately we have a top-notch hospital in Espanola, but a lot of people that live in Mora or Cimarron, Clayton, different parts of rural New Mexico, they don't have immediate access, and we definitely need to do a lot more to support them.
Yeah, that is so true. When we're talking about the shutdown of our businesses, and we're worried about livelihoods, and then we have to think about healthcare. And why don't we look at healthcare next? One of the things about living in rural areas is our internet is unstable. So every now and again we will get this the internet is unstable. So I'm sorry to you and to our viewers. But let's look at healthcare next, because since you just talked about that, and one of the problems that we have, and I live in a small community, but we happen to have a rural hospital, which is a whole category of hospital, these rural hospitals, and but other counties around us that maybe don't even have that, and so they have to come to Socorro. But if we have an issue, if somebody comes down with COVID here and actually has an issue, they don't stay here. They have to get onto a helicopter and go into Albuquerque. And so we have these issues where we have to have these central hospitals. And I know that you're aware of these lines that we've come up with where people go if they're ill. But so let's talk about healthcare right now, because that is a problem in our state.
Yes. So a big thing, one of the things I'm proud of is I helped get funding for a health clinic in Colfax County, down in Cimarron. And we need to make sure we strategically place these places where they're not more than an hour away from anyone, because like you said, we are very rural. We need to focus on making sure people have access, even like telemedicine. Broadband is a huge issue, like you just brought up, where we had a little glitch. I was doing a forum the other night, I think for the Santa Fe Federation of Democratic Women, and my screen froze for a couple minutes. I had to call them from my cell phone. That's an example. We need to make it a priority. I know if I were to become a congressman, I would place a focus on meeting with like the CDC to come up with a plan on how to address this in the future, lessons learned. But I know I'm jumping off topic. We're talking about healthcare. Healthcare is very important. I think we have good building blocks as far as it comes to the Affordable Care Act, but there's a lot more we need to do. I know as a state representative, I voted to allow purchases from Canada for people's prescription drugs. I think that's something we need to do nationally. That's just an example. I voted to protect people with pre-existing conditions. These are basic things we got to protect and work very hard to protect, but we also got to expand that so people are fully covered and expenses are fully covered. We got to improve Medicaid. And I know people talk about Medicare for all, and I think that's the right direction. But I think right now a good start would just be showing that our federal government can do a good job providing affordable insurance. Because I know, like, our VA hospitals, they have a lot of issues, and it's a great ideal plan to put everyone on Medicare for all. But I think we need to demonstrate that the federal government can run a medical program efficiently. I don't know that they've demonstrated that with our VA hospitals, but that's why I'm really pushing to offer an affordable option. But I definitely think we got to expand the Medicare, protect it, expand Medicaid and protect it, and we got to do everything we can to make sure everyone has access to insurance.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true, that, you know, we do need to make sure that people have access, not just access, but insurance that covers everything, whether that insurance is a Medicare for all type, or if that's what we're working towards, which which is a good idea to move toward it. But maybe measured steps is, and that sounds like that's what you're talking about, is taking measured steps.
Yeah, because what I've noticed in rolling out huge systems in my professional career, there's always a ton of bugs, and the last thing you want to have bugs with is when you're dealing with someone's life. I just want to make sure we do it right, and it's precise and it's done effectively, and we're not going to put people's lives at stake because the system's not working correctly.
Right.
So that's what I would want to avoid.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead, because I know that we got to keep on moving forward in this interview. Let's go ahead and talk about another aspect that that we're having issues with here in New Mexico and all across the country, and that is our jobs and our economic situation. And this has, economic development in our state is something that we've talked about over and over and over again anyway. And now we have this additional, problem of the pandemic that has closed down so many businesses, and some that won't be reopening, and so many issues. And so can you talk about what you're thinking for economic development as we move forward?
So I think there's a lot of things we got to address. There's no silver bullet. One of them is education. We need to make sure we provide a trained workforce. The trades, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, those are huge. I know when we talk about the movie industry, from what I've heard, they've brought in a lot of these different trades to come in to perform that work because they can't supply the workforce. They were building Facebook in Albuquerque or Los Lunas, and they were taking all these trades, so they didn't have the workforce available to supply the movie industry. We need to make sure we provide a trained workforce that's able to do that. That's an example. We got to create a pipeline for places like Los Alamos National Laboratory. A lot of times they hire people from out of state to come in, and a great thing Northern New Mexico College is doing is they're training students in programs to be technicians in programs at Los Alamos. So they're providing a local workforce to take these jobs, and I think that's a great idea. The other thing that we need to make a major emphasis on is infrastructure. The census. I know a lot of companies look at the census to see if they have sufficient customers before they bring in an industry. So that's another aspect people don't talk about when we talk about the census. We got to make sure if a company is going to look at coming somewhere, do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the water they need? Do they have the electricity they need? Do they have the broadband they need? These are three major issues that affect our entire state. And something I've been talking about from day one is the Navajo Nation. Now it's the hot topic with the COVID-19 coming up. But from day one, since last year, I've been talking about the lack of running water and electricity in the Navajo Nation. I've said that's a joke. We're in the United States of America, and right here in our backyard, people don't have running water. Like, that's just an example. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but those are a few things that we can do to address. I'm just so passionate about all the needs. That's why I get real passionate about it.
That's good. That's what I was going to ask you about, was infrastructure and next, and you've just hit it, because we do have an issue when we're talking about the Navajo Nation not having running water, and medical clinics and good roads and electricity, and and these are within our own state. But then we look at just communities here in our own state that also don't have good running water and don't have these things. So if infrastructure is totally something that is important, and I'm glad that you've addressed that you already addressed that. Another thing that we do have an issue with in our state here is public safety, and it's just a growing concern. So could you spend a minute and talk about your ideas there?
So I think one of the major contributors to public safety is the drug epidemic, the addiction epidemic. When I talk about addiction, I'm not just talking about heroin or any other drugs. I'm talking about alcoholism, domestic violence. All these things are a huge factor that take up a big chunk of the issues we face. I think if we can start to address that, like I said, all these issues we're talking about, there's no silver bullet, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can try to address to minimize the issues we're dealing with. And I think addiction is a huge area that we can make major inroads to if we do well with that. I think that'll cut a lot of the crime down. I know, like I said, I'm from Rio Arriba County. We're the poster child for overdoses, not just locally, but nationally. Time magazine had a issue that came out about 2 years ago that featured like 15 communities throughout the country. There were 2 pictures in there that came out of Rio Arriba County, one from Alcalde, where I live, and one from Chimayo, which is also in Rio Arriba County. Why isn't our federal government doing more to bring more funding to address that issue? And that's the things I get passionate about. I know that I think last year we had our congressional delegation happy that they got $5 million for the entire state. I don't even think that's enough for Rio Arriba County. And there were hundreds of millions of dollars that went out throughout the entire country. I know Mitch McConnell probably got a lot of that for his area, but I would be kicking and screaming, like, what makes those people where you're from in Kentucky any more important than the Hispanics where I live, where this is plaguing our communities? That's an issue that I'm very passionate about, that I will really fight for. I've tried to help address that issue as a state representative. I know that's one of my top 3 priorities if I get into Congress.
Oh yeah, and the whole idea, that we need money to support our law enforcement and training so that they know how to handle those people in those issues, mental health, because it's a mental health issue, which goes right back into healthcare. I mean, all of those things are so intertwined, and it's such an important topic. And thank you for those thoughts and ideas. We're right at the end now. And so I would like you to take a minute and just appeal directly to your constituency in your district why they should be choosing you.
So just to reemphasize, born and raised right smack in the middle of the district, firsthand, I've seen a lot of the issues we're dealing with: addiction, poverty, lack of jobs, lack of quality education, lack of healthcare. My background, 2 master's degrees. I've run a $100 million utility, overseen over 100 employees. I'm a state representative. I'm the vice chair on the appropriations committee. I have the experience, the education, and the background to really make major moves as a congressman. There's over 400 congressmen, but no one has my education and background in electric utilities. I could make major pushes towards renewables and getting off fossil fuels. I could be a major person pushing on that type of policy. There's probably a handful of people that could do that. And I know we have a lot of good candidates, but I would definitely stick out in that arena. And then with my background and experience, I think I would do a great job, because I love New Mexico and I just want to see us do better. And I love our country. And I think everyone's running because they want to help, but I've had a good life. I've been successful professionally, and I just really want to help our communities move forward.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you take a minute, just let our viewers know what your website is and how they can get in touch with you that way so that they can learn some more about you and donate if they wish.
So please go to my website. It's www.josephsanchezforcongress.com. I also have a Facebook, Joseph Sanchez for Congress, Twitter, Instagram. All my information's on there. My phone number's on there if anyone wants to give me a call to ask more questions. I also have an email. I do my best to respond to calls. I promise I will get back to you. It might not be immediately, but it will be within a couple of days. So thank you for having me on your show, and thank you to all the listeners. I hope you guys all stay safe and have a blessed day. And please vote for Joseph Sanchez for Congress.
Yes, and I'll have your information for your website down below in the comments and below your picture right here where you're from your interview, so that people will also be able to see it that way to get
Great.
through to you. And so again, thank you so much for being here, and everybody out there, thank you again for viewing this this important interview. I want to again appeal to you, as I do at the end of every one of these interviews, to make sure that you go to the website of the person that we're interviewing so that you can learn more about him, and then also go and learn more about all of your other candidates so that you are able to make the best decision that you can possibly make. And I urge you to go out and vote in the primary election. As I say, primary elections are almost more important than the general election, because this is when you personally get to make your choice of who is going to represent your party on your ballot, which in the end makes people happier about the choice that they end up voting for. And thank you again, everybody, for viewing. Thank you for being here, and we'll see everybody next time.